And here we are for a Tuesday episode of Dualistic Unity Social, which is being recorded just before our next call-in show, which is dope because the call-in show is no longer call-in, as in C-A-L-L. It is now the Quall-in show, Q-A-L-L, which works because it's a Q&A and a call-in show all in one. So if you can join us, definitely do. Twitch.tv/Dualistic Unity, or you can join us on YouTube Live. Just search for Dualistic Unity, or you can just hang out with us on LinkedIn. Actually, we're streaming there as well as on X, which I still think should just be called X Twitter, because that's kind of what it is. So it's the only way I can remember it, because otherwise X just sounds ridiculous. I'm not sure how to refer to it otherwise. I'm just like, it's X Twitter. And that makes sense to everybody, where I'm like, have you tried X? They're like the random variable? No, I have not. So anyway, this is where we're starting off today. First off, holy shit. Yesterday, we decided we were going to host our very first marathon episode of Dualistic Unity, and we were doing it with the intention of trying to raise enough money to give somebody within our community a ticket to our retreat, because as everybody knows, we don't really make any profit. So we don't have enough to just give away a ticket. It's very hard for us to do so. So the community came out in droves yesterday, and we ended up with over 50 donations by the end of the day, within a 12-hour period. Over 50 donations, and we actually went over the amount for the second ticket, or for the ticket. We went over the amount, so that means we're actually in the second ticket now. So anything that we can raise from here on in, we're going to throw towards another ticket, or at least a severe discount for somebody else who's having problems making it to one of these retreats. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you, everyone who participated, everybody who was there, everybody who was just hoping it went well for us, everybody who's listened to the podcast, even if you didn't know about it. The fact is that it's with your help that we were able to bring in enough of a crowd, to have enough of a community, to have enough clarity to see the value in this, to make it happen. So all of us had a big ripple in this, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and it just goes to show what's possible when we set ourselves aside for a second and come together for a bit, not for any reason, not to feel better, not to feel important by any means, but just something to do. You get a good look at what's actually going on. You're like, this makes sense. This is something that I can do, and this makes sense right now. So yeah, it was a very fun experience too. Amanda, what is up? Because and might be something, Levi, hey man, might be something that we just do more frequently for like anything. There's a bunch of things, and more retreat tickets, billboard, book promotion, and just live stream and just talk about shit and drum up traffic and get people interested and see where it goes and see what happens.
I actually had an idea.
Yes.
Why not do one for Fidelium?
Yes. Definitely.
That would be dope. I'm sure they would appreciate that. And how easy would that be? It's like, here's a few clips. Do you want to support that? Right? It's like anyone with ears is like, yeah, I do.
Oh yeah, because we played some on the live stream yesterday, but we could just like talk about some shit. Like, all right, time for another Fidelium clip. Just drum up the album sales or traffic to them or whatever. Wherever that goes, because they're fucking incredible. Like I pretty much get goosebumps every single time. Like I haven't listened to a ton of like, what is that considered? I want to say orchestral music that has to do with orchestras and violins, and but yeah, it's powerful. So I'm definitely down to do a marathon live streamathon for Fidelium.
I know they'd be stoked for sure. I'll talk to Trish there, because of course we live in the same town, so I'll reach out, and maybe perhaps midway through the marathon we can get one or two of the Fidelium members to actually join us and then play a piece, just to give people an idea, have a little chat with us, do that whole thing. That'd be a lot of fun for sure. But this is the kind of thing we want to do, because it's the kind of thing that we can do as a whole. all of us together. It doesn't take much. I mean, there were people yesterday who pitched $5, and it made a difference. It makes a difference. Imagine what we could do. Like, we had 50 plus donations yesterday in a 12-hour period. And each and every one of those people contributed to a ripple. Most importantly, they contributed to a person who will continue to make ripples in their entire lifetime. And the same is true for somebody, or for a group like Fidelium. The same is true for every one of those young musicians. They're going to have a lifetime ahead of them where they make ripples. And wouldn't it be wonderful to let them know that there are people out there who actually see what they're doing and how hard they're working? Right? As opposed to people who are just looking for the next celebrity to worship, but to actually look at the beauty of a human being putting their time and attention into something to the point where they gain some mastery of it. And at such a young age, it's definitely something that should be celebrated. It's something that's exciting to be able to bring attention to.
Oh yeah, because you think about the future of our generations and all that good stuff, and people look at that like with school, and it's teach them all the things for the future. And it's like, no, stoke their willingness to be themselves and take responsibility for themselves and actually dig into something that they care about. And let's stoke more of that shit. Like kids having an interest in something, anything. Because like there's so many things that kids will have interest in that people will push them away from because it's not something you can make a lot of money doing. And in a world where there is enough to go around, wouldn't it be cool if we could stoke some of those passions for things that maybe aren't the most lucrative thing? Because so much of that is then just taking on ourselves and just to make ourselves more, all those the jobs that people don't really want or actually are enthusiastic about, but gives them more money and gets them to feel better about themselves instead of just someone, doing their thing, expressing themselves authentically. Like that's the kind of shit I want to support. Absolutely. Because that's fucking exciting. And then everyone benefits. The world benefits. It's like the education, schooling stuff with college. Like, wouldn't it benefit the world if everyone, and not even like, present day college educations, I don't know, but some sort of ability to teach people, and like that helps everyone. Like we're helping ourselves. It's this cohesive organism machine that we're like dividing into this shell of an experience just to feel better about ourselves instead of looking at ourselves and realizing like, oh, there's things we can do. And it's fucking cool when you set yourself aside for a split second. You're like, oh, I am the world. There are things I can do. I have a lot of capabilities and functionalities and time to spend on things. And wouldn't it be incredible if people no one to change but yourself. There's no one to do it but yourself. If you're the world and the world changes with you, right? So how much value are you deriving?
Right. Well, this is it though. Isn't it funny? Like all of a sudden, because we don't want to be famous, we don't want to be rich, we don't want to be celebrities, those aren't the things that we're looking to. Those aren't the things we want to support, right? What do we want to do? We want to spend more time on ourselves. We want to spend more time practicing expression. We want to spend more time, just being and becoming aligned with that, accepting that experience, actually finding some peace in that experience. And so all of a sudden we start looking at people who are doing that, and we want to encourage that. And we want to discourage any of the temptation for those people who are currently doing that to make it about themselves, to actually make themselves feel better than others. We want to show them like, no, this is celebrated by everyone, not because you're better, but because you're an expression of what everyone can do. So it's really quite cool. We had a question on my side in the Instagram part. I'm sure y'all have spoken about BPD, but would you guys touch on it a little? So BPD, borderline personality disorder. We've actually talked about this previously on the show. As you said, we probably have, but we have. I've also had previous conversations with therapists and counselors and whatnot. And here's the thing about BPD. It's kind of what they tell you when they have to tell you something. Because when you look at borderline personality disorder, and it's often looked at as a mental illness, and that word immediately throws you off. It's not an illness. Okay, it's not an illness anymore than if something was, working in or something misaligned in your car is sick. It's like, no, it's just that there's something misaligned and it's causing a consequence. There's something that you're focused on in your mind and it's causing a consequence. Okay, so in this case, when we're talking about borderline personality disorder, hold on a second. I'm just going to get a list of symptoms because I've done this before and it's really, really interesting. Appreciate your patience. All right, there we go. Unstable relationships, unclear, shifting self-image, impulsive, self-destructive behaviors, self-harm, extreme emotional swings, feelings of emptiness and lack, explosive anger, fear of abandonment. So when you look at this, that's just life. The only thing is that's life when you don't have any grounding. You're just being pushed and pulled all the time. Everything you feel, you've got to express. Like there's no sense of calm in anything that you're doing. It's not that there's a disorder. It's just that you are reacting to everything. You're reacting to it, thinking that you have to react to it. Like if you don't, it's suddenly all going to fall apart. The fear of abandonment, things like that. All of this stuff, these are thoughts that can run away with you if you don't remind yourself, right? They're just thoughts, though. I can really get carried away in that. And again, I speak as somebody who went through this. I understand, right? It really is just not having a sense of self. And not a sense of self in the conceptual sense, because that's the problem with this, is that if you're looking for a self-image that's going to help you and buoy you through the emotional swings, you'll never find one, because as soon as you hold on to a self-image, here come the emotional swings. Because now it's going to boost you up and it's going to defend. It's going to give you something to defend so it can be torn down. So here comes your fear. Here comes your anger. Here comes your frustration. All of that comes from holding on to some idea of yourself and hoping that that's going to ground you, and it never will. The idea of yourself is a fiction. It will always come into conflict with reality. Right? So if you want to ground yourself, you have to ground yourself in uncertainty. And I know that sounds contradictory, but you do. You have to accept you don't know. You don't know. You've never known. Everything that you're trying to project into the future is an assumption, just so you can feel like you do know, just so you can feel like the ground is actually beneath your feet. But it's a fictional ground. That's why it keeps disappearing underneath your feet. To let that go is to actually be where you are in yourself. And there is a silence and a space that you can cultivate before you react to those fears, before you give those thoughts power. So it's not a disorder. It's just a tendency to get caught up in thought. And we've all been taught to get caught up in thought. This is why it's borderline personality disorder. It means it's not quite a disorder yet, but there's some shit happening. That's all of us all the time. Like it really is. It's just that you're afraid. And so you're looking for some way out of it. You're afraid. So you're looking for some answer. What the fuck is wrong? And they're giving you an answer. Borderline personality disorder. And in its name, it says it's not really the disorder that it sounds like, just that it's on the edge of it. And that's because a disorder is a tendency that's gotten carried away, a tendency that you are no longer aware of. It's pure reflex. Right now, you still have the ability to become aware of these things, which means to not react to them. That's how you become aware of them. When you become afraid, when you become angry, when you become frustrated, don't react to those thoughts. Don't even give them power if you can, and you'll start to realize where they come from. And that's the process of coming back to yourself. That's the process of true grounding in who you are rather than on a fictitious platform that will always disappear.
Yeah, I've never, I say I've never dealt with it, but at the same time, absolutely. Like everything in as a component of that description, I've had that. Like I could easily be diagnosed with that. And I think just about anyone who's ever believed even in a tiny bit of a thought to be the truth, like you're on that spectrum. right there, because it's always a response to those thoughts, to those shifting and changing thoughts. And if there's an idea of yourself there, those thoughts are going to continue to flutter through almost, and depending how you respond based on how you perceive yourself in a seemingly certain way, that it's in, as you're standing on uncertainty, it's going to feel like you're all over the place because you're trying to hold on to something that isn't you. It's not you. And so something like that, it's almost like just how extreme it gets, or how far from where people are comfortable being that gets, like where society is at. And so if there's assumptions of like the right way to act, the correct way to act, as soon as there's like a social norm for how to act in a, relatively subdued, chilled out, like non-emotional way, then anytime there are those fluctuations, there's going to be some fight to them, some resistance to them, instead of just being yourself, like, which isn't the idea. It's just what's there. It's all in there. And if it was realized that it's all in there, all of those things, there wouldn't be so much of a response to the inkling of it that then amplifies it. Because if it's not supposed to be in there at all, then it's there. It's like the fight back and forth. Then all of a sudden you're all over the place. But if it's all in there, all of it, whatever pops up, whatever comes up, it's all in there, then there isn't so much to fight or assume that shouldn't be there. And it's like so often just that resistance in the immediacy to whatever's fluttering on by, that then, we think we have to do something with, instead of just letting it flutter by and, taking it in and then letting it flutter. Yeah.
Well, that's it, right? Like that's what makes it a disorder, or that's what makes it so hard to deal with, is that it just every thought that hits us knocks us off our feet, right? And it's just because we keep trying to take a stance. And if we weren't doing that, then we'd be dancing with them. They wouldn't make a damn difference. But we keep trying to stand on something. And so as soon as I want to stand on something, all of a sudden I'm opposed to something else. And that's the problem. Like every time I want to stand on a positive idea of myself, the negative idea becomes a danger. Right? Immediately. And if I don't stand on that idea, then I can look at both of them and learn from them. I can recognize the nuance of life, the gray area that exists with everything, right? But as soon as I try to pick a side, I'm in conflict. As soon as I try to pick a box, I feel divided, right? And that's exactly the point, is that it's instantaneous. As soon as you focus on identity as the truth, you start to feel worse. Worse. It's not even worse. There are ways that you can feel better in that, but they're always temporary and they're always in danger, as opposed to the freedom of just being yourself, which is giving up the need to be more than someone else. Because that's really it. I asked this question once on social media. If you could never worry about judgment again, but it meant you had to give up judging other people yourself, would you do it? Some people straight up said no. And it's just because, again, it's like, well, then how would I feel better about myself? It's like, that's why you feel worse. The credibility you give judgment is the credibility you give other people's judgment.
Jesus fucking Christ, that cycle, just the cycle and because immediately, if you have, like, if everything's relative, right, then having a positive idea of yourself is just relative to negative ideas you have of other people. Like, you have to be at odds with reality if you're holding on to a way to make yourself feel better. Like, you're immediately going to be at odds. You're immediately going to be judgmental, and you're immediately in this mix of how you're doing in the world. I've quite enjoyed not thinking of myself as a good person lately. That was a stance I stood with for a long time, and beat myself up every time I was the slightest bit inconsiderate. Cheers, Jay, for sure. Yeah. I just posted a Instagram story in response to some woman's comment on my stand-up comedy little video thing with the "Bitches Be Crazy" song. No chance I would have posted that a couple months ago, even, because this assumption of like, oh, well, people might think that I'm being mean. I'm like, I think it's fucking hilarious because that bitch be crazy. That bitch was crazy. Like, she's requesting that I change for her. It's an absolutely insane thing.
Demanding
Just for her that I change. But there are people who will probably read that and see my response and think my response is worse than her comment, which is crazy.
Welcome to my world.
Oh shit, that was the whole shirtless dude on Discord thing. Oh my god. And that, because people want to hold on to it themselves. Their desire that someone else cater to their request, their need for anything, and that need to be,
You got it.
that need to be fucking, I don't, what do you mean? I don't know which thing I said.
It really comes down to that, I only want kind people to deal with myself, regardless of my shit. Therefore, you should always be kind. Right? It's like, no, that's not the only lessons. It's just the lessons that they like. This is where that often comes from. It's like, well, it's not very unifying, to tell somebody, or to laugh at somebody when they're telling you should change as a person. It's like, well, there's nothing I can do with that. You expect me to just reach in and change their mind? Like, I can't do that. Like, the entire idea that the kind response is going to have the right impact comes right back down to control. It comes right down to manipulation and force. And that comes down to your personal preferences, because you don't like certain parts of reality. Like when shit's uncomfortable and someone tells you that you are obviously insecure. That's it. And it's like, why is that such a bad thing? Well, because it hurts. It's not a very nice thing to say. Blah, blah, blah. What, you'd rather they just went through their life not dealing with it, assuming that everybody else couldn't see it? What does that say about you?
Not that you care about them very much at all. Oh yeah, because it only hurts if you're holding on to some idea that you're not, or trying to avoid the fact that that's in there too. Because she said some things on that comment that, like, they don't feel great for me to be like, you seem really, your hair looks terrible. I don't give a fuck about that one, but like, you seem socially awkward more recently and in your head a lot. I'm like, yeah, no, that's all in there. That's all part of me. I'm not going to deny that. Like, I recognize.
But did you notice, like, what they're telling you is what they desperately try to hide?
Oh my God. Things get fucking trippy. Like, when people are actually just expressing all the time, like, they're always expressing where they're at. Like, no matter what they do, no matter what. And so that thought of like reading someone's mind, it's not even like you have to do that. It's just you're seeing you just pay attention to them. It's not some magical thing. You just are honest with yourself and see where your own shit and responses come from and why you would respond in that way. And, everyone's responses in that way, and why and where it comes from and what they're trying to hide and protect and guard. And anytime you're trying to fucking feel better about yourself, there's something you're trying to feel better about, some other assumption you're trying to layer on top of that shit.
Exactly. There's no right answer. Just be yourself. This is more or less the practice. This is why, you'll see me in the comment section on Instagram or TikTok from time to time. Like somebody will come on real hard. They'll be like, yeah, well, you guys full of shit. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to meet you exactly with that energy. Welcome to the party. And then they go, well, hold up. They're like, you're spiritual. You're supposed to be unifying. You're not supposed to talk like this. It's like, see, that is exactly why you left that fucking comment. It's because you never expected someone to actually respond in the way that you're afraid of them responding. That's why you left it. You thought you were in a safe place with a bunch of fucking pacifists. All right. And so you're like, I'm going to come across as a troll because nobody's going to stand up to me. It's like, yeah, well, guess what? We see the insecurity, bud. We understand you're lonely. You're sitting in your house alone with no one to talk to and no one to engage with. And you've settled for argumentation as the only engagement you're ever going to get. And you're like, I'm just going to piss people off. At least then they'll talk to me. And that's the whole point. It's like when you recognize what's happening, you can just address it. But everybody else who wants to avoid the exact same problem, they're going to be like, oh. Like I'll tell you right now, the comment that set Buddy off the most was when he's like, well, why won't you have a chat with me here in the TikTok section or in the comment section of TikTok? Is this not pure consciousness? Blah, 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 blah. And this was like his third or fourth comment. He was mad at me. And finally, I'm just like, look, man, I get you're lonely and you want to engage with somebody. And my answer is very frustrating to you. Right. But this is not the place to have this conversation. And that was it, because I just stopped fucking around. Like the frustration is coming from a desperation. The desperation is coming from the loneliness. Right. And that desperation is twisting every conversation they have, which is making them toxic, which means that they seriously can't engage with other people unless they're toxic. Right. So you might as well just cut to the chase and just say what the fucking problem is. And somebody else got back to me. They're like, oh, I was kind of harsh. It's like, is it? Is it harsh to address the loneliness that dogs at you, that eats at you, and like behind the scenes? Is it harsh to address something that actually influences almost every choice you fucking make until you address it? I think it's harsher to let people languish in that shit. I think it's harsher to go around my life wanting people to smile whenever they see me rather than to actually enjoy their life, rather than to actually, find some growth and peace in themselves.
Oh man. And I am appreciating this week's look at the kindness shit and the manipulation behind that. Because if you're walking around hoping that everyone smiles at you when you walk around, as opposed to just being themselves and doing their thing and having some strength in themselves, that is entirely selfish. It's entirely selfish for someone to want to look at you in a certain way, for someone to perceive you in a certain way. And that need to be liked, like how deep that one runs and how manipulative it is, because it's for me. If I want people to like me, it's for me. It's not for them. It's for me. It's always for me. It's about me. Me, 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 me. And then the most important thing in my life, and that's something that's pushed. It's like, well, whoa, what do you mean? You're not. I can't be the most important thing in my life. I'm me. And it's like, where's that gotten you? Where's that taken you? You being the most important thing in your life. Petrified, tense, worried all the time, concerned, afraid of jumping into anything new. It's like, where the fuck has you being the most important thing in your life actually gotten you? A couple cessations here and there, and that's about it. And is that what life is about? Just some couple brief cessations when we're distracted from our shit enough to feel a little bit better? Or is it about just living and being yourself? And then it's not about how you're looked at. It's not about how you're perceived. It's you actually living for you. But as long as you're trying to be as long as you're trying to be liked, you're always going to be at odds with yourself, because now you're trying to optimize. What's the best way to be liked in this situation? What's the best way to be liked in this situation? What's the best way to be liked in this situation? And it's a crazy way to live. But it stems from, feeling like we can even do that. We can even be in control or be comfortable. And those who are actually being themselves are going to appreciate someone being themselves far more than someone trying to get them to like them, because they see that it's manipulation. It is manipulation to want to be liked. It's all about you. It's all about you if you're trying to be liked.
And the only reason I do it is because I don't know myself. I don't know how to like myself. So if enough people like me, then I can validate the choice to like myself. I can lean on that choice to like myself and look at all the evidence. But then all of a sudden I'm afraid of losing all these people, because then I'm going back to not liking myself. And the reason I can't like myself is frankly because I keep trying to like an idea. I keep trying to come to this idea, to this place where I feel good about myself all the time. You're not supposed to feel good about yourself all the time. You're not supposed to focus on yourself all the time at all. The point is that, you're going to feel a lot of things in your life. The point is to move through them. But if you decide you need to cherry pick one thing all the time, that's dangerous. You're blocking yourself off from a lot of lessons, a lot of context, a lot of empathy. And that's just it, is that it just comes down to this idea, like, but if I like myself, I'll be happy. This is where the self-esteem thing went fucking way off the rails, right? Like, if I really have a good idea of myself, if I really like myself, then I'm going to be happy. A lot of fucking toxic people really like themselves, or at least the idea of themselves that they've invested in, which is why they defend it so much, which is why they're so fucking toxic. Right? It's because they need to have that idea. They need to maintain that idea. They need to be powerful, decisive. They need to be successful. They need to be looked at a certain way. They need to be, and that's the whole point, is that anything that violates that is either a fear, right, or something that they need to reject right away. It's just a box. Trying to be something is just a box. And the only reason we try to be something is because we don't understand how to like ourselves or deal or be at peace with ourselves otherwise. Well, if it's not an idea at the top of a mountain, how the fuck can I feel good about myself? Just by being free. Because if you really want to feel good about yourself, think about the reasons you feel bad about yourself. It will always be because of something you think. It will always be because you're afraid of not being enough. And all that shit's in your head. So if you want to feel good about yourself, stop participating in that shit in your head. Your thoughts will never make you feel good. But being in reality, free of those thoughts, able to choose what you want, to actually be here, to hear things as they happen, make your own choices, decide your own priorities, that goes way beyond feeling good. Because at least then it's just you feeling you. And that's a whole spectrum. It's the whole spectrum of emotions, but none of them will overwhelm you because it's all you, instead of you trying to keep up with the world, which is always beating you down.
And when you're willing to not look so much and just be yourself, be cool with yourself, for yourself, it's like, it's not that you have sway over the emotions, but you have sway over the response, and that changes everything. Because if feeling sad doesn't make you sad, then there's a difference to it. If there's an appreciation for the fullness of the spectrum of everything that you are, then you can interact with the world in whichever way that you want to, because it's for you, and there's not an expectation for anyone to be anything for you, and there's not a desire to manipulate anyone into changing, because you're not trying to change yourself. It's not trying to change yourself and assume that whatever plays out when you're just letting go and relaxing and being yourself, whatever happens, like, it's okay. And as you let that play out, as you let that continue to happen, you actually start gaining an appreciation for what it means to be you, start gaining faith in yourself, like you're not really, as long as you're looking around or trying to be something or trying to change yourself, you're not gaining any faith in yourself at all if you're looking to someone else for anything, like looking to a book, looking to a video, looking to us right now, looking to anything. Like, don't do that ever. Like, I'm not saying stop listening necessarily, but like, you got this, and like, I don't care if you like me. And I'm getting this, that might be the first time I've actually said that genuinely, and I don't even know what the fuck that means, but like, that desire to be liked, man, it runs deep, and it's such a fucking prison. It's such a prison because it puts you at odds with everything. It's always going to be a bar if you're trying to be liked, because it's always trying to control something that you can't control, trying to control yourself into something that would then be liked by someone else. It's like doubling down on control and not wanting to accept the reality of uncertainty at the same time. That need to be liked, man. It's so brutally runs deep and is so unnecessary, and yet we'll hold it like it's the most important thing in the world.
Well, it was for a good portion of our life. Like I said, we got shoved into school, which is a collective environment where if you didn't get along with the other kids, that was a problem. The only reason it was a problem is because you weren't allowed to leave. Right? So all of a sudden there was some necessity to be liked. There were fucking report cards telling you whether or not you were being liked enough. You know, and I know my earliest report cards were, and you'll never guess, Ray does not play well with others. You know, why do you think that was? Because I needed my own fucking space. Right? But we don't get that option. And so we learn how to modify our behavior. We learn how to put on a mask. We learn how to do the acceptable things that will have us not only fit in, but, you know, get rewarded, because that's the easiest way to fit in, isn't it? You know, if you're doing so well that you're getting rewarded, you're not just fitting in, you're fucking excelling. And year after year, we just gave up more and more of our ability to express ourselves the way that we actually feel. Until finally, we don't know how to express how we actually feel. We don't know how to actually feel it. All we know is our response to the feelings, because we've learned so carefully over the entirety of our life that our response to our feelings was super important. Because if we didn't respond to our feelings the right way, we draw attention. And with that attention came a punishment. And so our response to our feelings became reflexive. And now that's all we know, is our response to our feelings, rather than allowing ourselves to actually feel them. And it's because we've forgotten that we're allowed to do that as human beings. And as adults, we have the space to feel them. It's just that we've forgotten to do so. We've forgotten how. We've forgotten that there was a feeling underneath our response. That conditioning's strong. It goes way back, way back. You know, and this is why it's so important to let your kids have some time to themselves. Because in that time to themselves, they're figuring out who they are. Right? But this is true for adults, because we are still kids. We are still the same things we were. Kids, adults, those are all just fucking concepts. You're just a bigger version of the smaller version you used to be.
Straight up. Straight up. And all that's like, it's all under the surface too. That those feelings that you learn to subdue or respond to in certain ways, like, it's still impacting you. It's still doing all the things. It's just under a bunch of layers. So it's like, you know, and it's like causing some, you know, earthquakes towards the top, but it's not really penetrating necessarily. And actually, like, because like you said, like, we forgot, it got trained out of us. You know, we got to control yourself. Control yourself. Holy shit. That's a phrase that we use when we're talking to kids. Shut up, control yourself. Stay in control. Maintain control. Jesus Christ, dude. It's like,
Mind your behavior.
oh, God. Like, mind your manners, mind your P's and Q's, act this way because it makes me
right, because otherwise you're not fitting in. Manners without genuine appreciation means nothing. Like somebody who's like, thank you, just because of the right words, isn't somebody appreciating it.
At all. Oh my God. How superficial we've gotten with those statements. Like we can just say something without actually doing anything about it. Lying to ourselves over and over and over and over. Just to
And everyone else. Right? Like that's really it. This is why it's so important to get over this need to be liked. It's not because, you're not going to be a likable person. I think that's what most of us fear. We're like, well, if I just respond the way I feel, I could be a total asshole. That's true. That is true. But here's an option. Instead of trying to be a likable person, how about you just be an empathetic one? Which means instead of immediately giving into your reaction to protect yourself, you recognize the person you're talking to feels exactly like you do. How would you interact with yourself right now? And that will generally change what you do. It may not change the response you give them, but it will change the tone with which you give it. We had somebody on the show the other day who was talking about prayer. They're in one of the Patreon groups. And prayer is such a touchy thing because there's a serious offer of hope, of control, of a larger being to rely on. There's a lot that goes into prayer and the belief in prayer. And at one point in my life, I would have, scoffed it off. I would have done all that because, of my own issues with prayer. I recognize what prayer does. I recognize, the purpose that it serves. And so when I talked to this person, when we addressed it in the group, there was nothing but empathy there. But nonetheless, I absolutely said everything I just said about the nature of prayer. I didn't hold it back just because it was uncomfortable or unpleasant. I didn't hold it back just because I knew it was going to hurt. I said it because I knew it was going to hurt, because the alternative was letting the hurt that the belief in prayer came from go on for longer. And so it's worth it to just be honest, because at least you're giving the person you're talking to an actual chance to grow. Instead of just letting them languish and not being the lesson that you were meant to be, which is why you're in their life. Like we're all resisting our own intelligence just because we don't want to admit that we're learning from it. We're like, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. It's like, that's how we grow. This is how we learn. It's so important to just be yourself. But when you start to be yourself, you recognize there is no good or bad people. There are no good and bad people. There are people, and we are more or less twisted up by our needs. That's more or less it.
Yeah, because it's not, oh gosh, it's not this simplistic view that people are doing things right or doing things wrong, good or bad, right or wrong. Like, there's so much more to that. Like, there's so much more to everyone that it is fucking fascinating that we've gotten so superficial. It's just, there's a right and a wrong way to live and act that everyone should follow and everyone should do. Well, I don't like them because they're not acting the right way and I'm acting the right way. And I want everyone else to act the right way. This believe in control, like, holy Christ, we actually think that we can, and there's things we can do to control someone else. Like, the person leaving the comment on the video, like thinking that they're in control of me. Thinking that they're in control, that we're in control. So we do judge in order to try and inflict our control over people. So it's been a lot of fun. Call-in show, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We will see all of you there. Very excited for that.
It's been a dope conversation. I'm really enjoying the trajectory of these conversations since the Virginia Beach retreat. It's funny how they're always kind of an accelerator. We're going to stop here. Join us in 15 minutes if you can on twitch.tv/dualistic unity or on YouTube Live. We're also on LinkedIn and X, Twitter, and all that. I said that earlier. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for donating to that ticket yesterday. We really appreciate your support. We'll see you very shortly.
Bye, everyone.